Rude customer yells at waitress. Ronaldo's generosity silences everyone. How will this story unfold? To find out, watch the video to the end. But first, please subscribe to my channel and turn on notifications to get more stories like this. The soft glow of the chandeliers cast a warm ambience over the elegant dining room of La Luna, a renowned upscale restaurant known for its exquisite cuisine and impeccable service. Amidst the gentle clink of silverware and the murmur of conversation, Isabella, a young waitress with a dedicated work ethic, navigated the tables with grace and poise. Her dark hair pulled back into a neat ponytail, Isabella's warm brown eyes sparkled with enthusiasm as she greeted each guest with a genuine smile. Despite the demanding nature of her job, she found joy in providing exceptional service, ensuring that every patron felt welcomed and valued. As she approached a table occupied by a well-known regular, Mr. Vasquez, Isabella took a deep breath, steeling herself for the challenge that lay ahead. The wealthy businessman was notorious for his arrogant demeanor and his penchant for belittling service staff, believing that his status granted him the right to treat others with disdain. Little did Isabella know that her interaction with Vasquez would set in motion a series of events that would not only test her resilience, but also reveal the true character of those around her. For at a nearby table, unbeknownst to her, sat Cristiano Ronaldo, the legendary footballer, quietly observing the scene that was about to unfold. Cristiano Ronaldo had chosen La Luna for a quiet evening with friends, seeking a respite from the constant spotlight that followed him. Known not only for his extraordinary talent on the football field, but also for his generosity and humility off it, Ronaldo had faced his fair share of pressure, criticism, and adversity throughout his illustrious career. As he engaged in lighthearted conversation with his companions, Ronaldo's attention was drawn to the nearby table where Mr. Vasquez sat, his brow furrowed in displeasure. The footballer watched as Isabella approached the table, her smile unwavering despite the palpable tension emanating from the businessman. Ronaldo couldn't help but admire Isabella's composure and professionalism, recognizing the strength it took to maintain a positive attitude in the face of such open hostility. He had witnessed firsthand the impact that a simple act of kindness could have on someone's day, and he found himself silently rooting for the young waitress as she navigated the challenging situation. As the evening progressed, Ronaldo found himself increasingly drawn into the unfolding drama between Isabella and Vasquez. He noticed the way the businessman's harsh words and dismissive attitude seemed to chip away at Isabella's confidence, and yet she persevered, her commitment to her job never faltering. Ronaldo, no stranger to the toll that mistreatment could take on one's spirit, felt a growing sense of unease as he witnessed the injustice occurring just a few feet away. He knew that he couldn't sit idly by, watching as someone was subjected to such cruelty. In that moment, he resolved to find a way to support Isabella and stand up against the mistreatment he was witnessing. Isabella approached Mr. Vasquez's table, her heart racing beneath her composed exterior. She had already endured several rounds of the businessman's complaints and criticisms, but she refused to let his behavior dampen her spirit. With a smile that concealed her inner turmoil, she carefully placed his entree before him. "Your dish, sir," she said, her voice steady and professional. "Is there anything else I can assist you with this evening?" Vasquez's eyes narrowed as he scrutinized the plate, his lips twisting into a contemptuous sneer. "This isn't what I ordered," he snapped, his voice dripping with disdain. "Are you incapable of getting even the simplest tasks right?" Isabella's smile faltered, a knot forming in her stomach as a wave of embarrassment washed over her. She knew that a small mix-up had occurred, but the harshness of Vasquez's response caught her off guard. "I sincerely apologize, sir," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "I'll have this corrected immediately." As she reached for the plate, Vasquez's hand shot out, his fingers clamping around her wrist in a vice-like grip. "I don't want your empty apologies," he snarled, his voice rising in volume, drawing the attention of nearby diners. "I want competent service. Is that too much to ask from someone in your position?" The restaurant fell silent, the once lively atmosphere turning heavy with discomfort as all eyes turned to the unfolding confrontation. Isabella, her wrist still trapped in Vasquez's grasp, felt the weight of the stares upon her, the humiliation burning through her like a raging inferno. Tears threatened to spill from her eyes, but she blinked them back, determined not to let them fall in front of her tormentor. Staff members froze, their expressions a mix of shock and helplessness, unsure of how to intervene without risking their own jobs. Other diners averted their gazes, their discomfort palpable, yet no one dared to confront Vasquez's blatant display of cruelty. But amidst the sea of averted eyes and frozen faces, one man refused to remain a passive observer. Cristiano Ronaldo, his heart heavy with the weight of the injustice before him, rose from his seat, his presence commanding the attention of the room. With purposeful strides, he approached Vasquez's table, his eyes locked on the businessman's face. "Excuse me, sir," Ronaldo said, his voice calm yet firm, cutting through the suffocating silence. "I couldn't help but notice the way you're treating this young lady. Is there a problem here that needs to be addressed?" Vasquez, startled by Ronaldo's sudden appearance, released his grip on Isabella's wrist, his eyes widening in recognition of the famous footballer. "This doesn't concern you," he said, his tone laced with a mixture of irritation and embarrassment. "I'm merely trying to receive the service I deserve." Ronaldo's gaze hardened, his usually warm demeanor replaced by a steely resolve. "And you believe that entitles you to belittle and humiliate someone who is simply trying to do their job? To treat them with such disrespect?" Vasquez opened his mouth to retort, but the words died on his lips as he took in the expressions of the other diners, their faces etched with disapproval and disdain. In that moment, he realized the gravity of his actions, the shame of his behavior laid bare for all to see. In the aftermath of Ronaldo's intervention, the atmosphere in the restaurant began to shift, the tension slowly dissipating as a newfound sense of unity and empathy took hold. Diners who had once averted their gazes now looked upon Isabella with compassion and respect, their own experiences with mistreatment and injustice resonating within them. Isabella, her heart still racing from the confrontation, felt a warm hand on her shoulder. She turned to see one of her colleagues, a fellow waitress named Sophia, offering her a comforting smile. "Are you all right?" Sophia asked, her voice filled with genuine concern. As Isabella's influence continued to grow, she found herself facing new challenges and opportunities. She was invited to speak at a national conference on workers' rights, sharing her story with a room full of activists, policymakers, and business leaders. As she stood at the podium, her heart racing with nerves and excitement, she looked out at the sea of faces before her. She saw in their eyes the same hope and determination that had carried her through her own struggles, the same desire to create a world where everyone was treated with dignity and respect. Taking a deep breath, Isabella began to speak, her voice clear and strong. She spoke of the power of compassion, of the way that a single act of kindness could change the course of a life. She spoke of the importance of standing up for others, of being a voice for the voiceless and a champion for the oppressed. As she spoke, she could feel the energy in the room shifting, the sense of purpose and solidarity growing stronger with every word. She knew that she was not alone in this fight, that there were countless others who shared her vision of a better world. When she finished her speech, the room erupted in applause, the sound washing over her like a wave of hope and possibility. She felt tears prickling at the corners of her eyes, overwhelmed by the support and the love that surrounded her. As she stepped down from the stage, she was greeted by a familiar face. Cristiano Ronaldo, the man who had first inspired her to stand up for herself and for others, stood before her, his eyes shining with pride and admiration. "You were incredible up there," he said, his voice filled with warmth and sincerity. "You have a gift, Isabella. A gift for inspiring others, for bringing out the best in people." Isabella felt a lump forming in her throat, tears of gratitude and joy threatening to spill down her cheeks. "I couldn't have done it without you," she said, her voice trembling with emotion. "You showed me what it means to be a true leader, to use your platform for good." Ronaldo smiled, his hand coming to rest on her shoulder. "We all have the power to make a difference," he said, his eyes shining with conviction. "It's up to us to use that power wisely, to be the change we wish to see in the world." As Isabella and Ronaldo stood together, basking in a glow of their shared triumph, they knew that their work was far from over. The fight for workers' rights, for a world where everyone was treated with dignity and respect, was a long and difficult one, filled with challenges and setbacks at every turn. But they also knew that they were not alone in this fight. They had seen firsthand the power of community, the way that a single act of kindness could ripple outward, touching countless lives and inspiring others to take action. In the months and years that followed, Isabella and Ronaldo continued to work tirelessly for the causes they believed in. They founded a nonprofit organization dedicated to supporting and empowering service workers, providing resources and advocacy for those who had been mistreated or exploited. They lobbied for policy changes at the local and national level, fighting for fair wages, better working conditions, and greater protections for workers' rights. They spoke out against injustice wherever they saw it, using their platforms to amplify the voices of those who had been silenced for too long. And through it all, they remained true to the values that had brought them together in the first place. compassion, respect, and a deep belief in the power of the human spirit to overcome even the greatest of challenges. As their work continued to grow and evolve, Isabella and Ronaldo began to see the true impact of their efforts. Restaurants and businesses across the country began to adopt new policies and practices, focusing on employee well-being and customer satisfaction. Workers who had once suffered in silence found the courage to speak out, to demand the respect and dignity they deserved. And at the heart of it all was a simple truth, that every person, no matter their station in life, had the right to be treated with kindness and compassion, to be valued for their contributions and their humanity. It was a truth that Isabella and Ronaldo had learned firsthand through the trials and triumphs of their own lives. And it was a truth that they would continue to fight for, no matter the obstacles that lay ahead. Years passed, and the world began to change, slowly but surely, in ways that Isabella and Ronaldo had once only dreamed of. The movement they had started had grown and evolved, spreading to every corner of the globe, touching the lives of millions of people. Service workers everywhere began to see themselves in a new light, not as mere cogs in a machine, but as valuable members of society, deserving of respect and dignity. They began to organize and advocate for their rights, forming unions and associations that gave them a stronger voice in the workplace and beyond. Governments, too, began to take notice, enacting new laws and regulations to protect workers' rights and ensure fair treatment for all. Businesses that once prioritized profits over people found themselves forced to adapt, to create cultures of empathy and understanding that valued the well-being of their employees as much as their bottom line. And at the center of it all, still working tirelessly for the cause they believed in, were Isabella and Ronaldo. They had become icons of the movement, symbols of hope and possibility for countless others who had suffered in silence for too long. But even as they basked in the glow of their success, they knew that their work was far from finished. There were still injustices to be fought, still hearts and minds to be changed. And they were determined to keep fighting, to keep pushing forward, until the world they had dreamed of became a reality for all. As Isabella looked back on her journey, from a young waitress struggling to make ends meet to a global advocate for workers' rights, she couldn't help but feel a sense of awe and gratitude for all that she had accomplished. She thought back to that fateful night at La Luna, to the moment when Ronaldo had first stood up for her, had shown her the power of compassion and kindness in the face of cruelty and injustice. She thought of the countless others who had joined her cause along the way, the brave and determined souls who had fought alongside her for a better world. And she thought of the lives that had been changed, the hearts that had been touched, by the simple act of treating others with respect and dignity. She had seen it in the eyes of the workers she had fought for, in the smiles of the customers who had learned to see service as a noble and valuable profession. She knew that there was still much work to be done, that the fight for justice and equality was a never-ending one. But she also knew that she had the strength and the courage to keep going, to keep pushing forward, no matter the obstacles that lay ahead. And as she looked to the future, to the world she hoped to leave behind for the next generation, she felt a sense of hope and possibility that filled her heart to bursting. She knew that change was possible, that a better world was within reach, if only they had the courage to fight for it. Isabella nodded, a shaky smile forming on her lips. "I will be," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. I can't believe what just happened." Sophia gave her shoulder a gentle squeeze. "You stood your ground, Isabella. You showed strength and grace in the face of cruelty. That's something to be proud of." As the two women shared a moment of solidarity, Ronaldo approached them, his expression softening. "I'm sorry you had to endure that," he said, his eyes meeting Isabella's. "No one deserves to be treated with such disrespect, especially someone who works as hard as you do." Isabella felt tears prickling at the corners of her eyes, overwhelmed by the footballer's kindness and support. "Thank you," she managed to say, her voice thick with emotion. "Your words, your actions, they mean more than you could possibly know." Ronaldo smiled, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "It's the least I could do. We all have a responsibility to stand up for what's right, to treat others with the kindness and respect they deserve." With those words, he reached into his pocket and withdrew a folded note, pressing it into Isabella's hand. "A token of my appreciation," he said, his voice warm and sincere. "For your hard work and your unwavering dedication, even in the face of adversity." As word of Ronaldo's act of kindness spread throughout the restaurant, a ripple of change began to take hold. Diners who had once been content to remain silent in the face of injustice now found themselves inspired to speak up, to offer their own words of support and encouragement to Isabella and her fellow staff members. Vasquez, who had retreated to his table in the wake of Ronaldo's intervention, found himself the subject of a different kind of attention. Where once he had been feared and revered for his wealth and status, he now felt the weight of disapproval and judgment from those around him. For the first time in his life, Vasquez was confronted with the consequences of his actions, the realization that his behavior had not only hurt those he had belittled but also diminished his own character in the eyes of others. As he sat there, his mind reeling from the events of the evening, he couldn't help but feel a twinge of shame, a flicker of regret for the way he had treated Isabella and countless others like her. Meanwhile, Isabella, bolstered by the support of her colleagues and the kindness of a stranger, felt a newfound sense of confidence and purpose. She had always taken pride in her work, but now she understood the true value of her contributions, the impact that her dedication and professionalism had on those around her. With renewed determination, she returned to her duties, her head held high and her heart filled with gratitude. She knew that the road ahead would not be easy, that there would be other challenges and obstacles to face. But she also knew that she was not alone, that she had the support of a community that recognized her worth and the importance of treating others with kindness and respect. In the days and weeks that followed, the impact of Ronaldo's act of kindness continued to reverberate throughout the restaurant and beyond. Isabella, who had once felt invisible and undervalued, now found herself the recipient of an outpouring of support and appreciation from customers and colleagues alike. Patrons who had witnessed the confrontation with Vasquez made a point of seeking her out, offering words of encouragement and leaving generous tips as a token of their respect. They shared their own stories of mistreatment and injustice, finding solace and solidarity in Isabella's resilience and grace. Isabella's colleagues, too, found themselves inspired by her example. They began to speak up more freely about their own experiences, sharing their struggles and their triumphs with one another. They formed a tight-knit community, united in their determination to create a workplace culture that valued respect, kindness, and equality. As for Vasquez, the once feared businessman found himself the subject of a different kind of scrutiny. Word of his behavior had spread beyond the walls of the restaurant, and he soon found himself facing the consequences of his actions in his professional and personal life. Business partners and associates who had once tolerated his arrogance and cruelty now began to distance themselves, unwilling to be associated with someone who treated others with such disdain. Even his own family members, who had long been subjected to his temper and his ego, began to question his character and his values. Vasquez, faced with the realization that his behavior had cost him more than just the respect of a single waitress, was forced to confront the man he had become. He knew that the road to redemption would be long and difficult, that he would have to work hard to earn back the trust and respect of those he had wronged. But for the first time in his life, he felt a glimmer of hope, a desire to be better, to make amends for his past mistakes. And though he knew that change would not come easily, he also knew that it was possible, that even the most hardened of hearts could be softened by the power of kindness and compassion. As the weeks turned into months, the story of Ronaldo's act of kindness and Isabella's resilience began to spread beyond the walls of the restaurant, touching the lives of people far and wide. Local media outlets picked up the story, highlighting the impact that a single moment of compassion could have on a community. They praised Ronaldo for his leadership and his humility, holding him up as an example of the kind of role model that the world so desperately needed. Isabella, too, found herself in the spotlight, her story of perseverance and grace inspiring others to speak out against injustice and mistreatment. She was invited to share her experiences at local schools and community events, encouraging young people to stand up for themselves and for others, to be the change they wish to see in the world. As her platform grew, Isabella began to see the true power of her voice, the impact that her words could have on those who had suffered in silence for too long. She became an advocate for service workers' rights, fighting for fair wages, better working conditions, and a culture of respect and dignity in the workplace. Her efforts did not go unnoticed. Other restaurants and businesses in the area began to take notice of the changes happening at La Luna, the way that a single act of kindness had sparked a movement of empathy and understanding. They began to implement their own policies and programs, focusing on employee well-being and customer satisfaction. They recognized that by treating their workers with respect and compassion, they could create a ripple effect of positivity that would extend far beyond their own walls. And at the center of it all was Isabella, the young waitress who had once felt invisible and undervalued, but who now stood tall as a beacon of hope and inspiration for countless others. She had learned that true strength came not from wealth or status, but from the courage to stand up for what was right, to treat others with the kindness and respect they deserved. As the sun began to set on another day of hard work and determination, Isabella found herself back at La Luna, the place where it had all begun. She sat at a table near the window, watching as the last few customers finished their meals and made their way out into the night. She thought back to all the moments she had shared in this place, the laughter and the tears, the triumphs and the struggles. She thought of the people she had met along the way, the friends and allies who had become like family to her. And she thought of Ronaldo, the man who had inspired her to be the best version of herself, who had shown her the true meaning of leadership and compassion. She knew that she would never forget him, that his legacy would live on in the hearts and minds of all those he had touched. As she sat there, lost in thought, she felt a gentle hand on her shoulder. She looked up to see Sophia, her old friend and colleague, smiling down at her. "Hey you," Sophia said, her voice warm and familiar. "What brings you back to our old stomping grounds?" Isabella smiled, feeling a rush of nostalgia and affection wash over her. "Just taking a trip down memory lane," she said, patting the seat beside her. "Care to join me?" Sophia grinned, sliding into the booth across from her. "I thought you'd never ask." And there they sat, two old friends, sharing stories and memories, laughing and crying together as the world outside continued to turn. They knew that they had been through so much together, had faced challenges and obstacles that would have broken lesser souls. But they also knew that they had emerged stronger, wiser, and more determined than ever to keep fighting for what was right. And as they looked to the future, to the world they hoped to create, they knew that they would always have each other and the countless others who had joined them on this journey. Years turned into decades, and the world continued to change, shaped by the tireless efforts of those who had fought for justice and equality. Isabella and Ronaldo, now old friends with a lifetime of shared experiences, watched as new generations took up the mantle, carrying on the work they had begun so long ago. They saw young people inspired by their example, standing up for their rights and the rights of others, demanding fairness and respect in the workplace and beyond. They saw businesses and governments adapting to the changing times, creating policies and practices that prioritized the well-being of workers and the communities they served. And they saw the fruits of their labors, the countless lives that had been touched and transformed by the power of compassion and kindness. They knew that their work had not been in vain, that they had made a difference in the world, one small act at a time. As they sat together in the quiet of Isabella's home, reminiscing about old times and marveling at how far they had come, they couldn't help but feel a sense of pride and gratitude for all that they had accomplished. "You know," Ronaldo said, his voice soft and thoughtful, "I never could have imagined, all those years ago, that a simple act of kindness could have led to so much change, so much good in the world." Isabella smiled, reaching out to take his hand in hers. "It just goes to show," she said, her eyes shining with wisdom and compassion, "that every action, no matter how small, has the power to make a difference. We all have the capacity to change lives, to create a better world, if we only have the courage to try." Ronaldo nodded, squeezing her hand in return. "And we did try," he said, his voice filled with pride and affection. "We tried, and we succeeded, beyond our wildest dreams." As they sat there, hand in hand, looking out at the world they had helped to shape, they knew that their legacy would live on, that the seeds they had planted would continue to grow and flourish long after they were gone. And they knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, no matter what obstacles they might face, they would always have each other and the countless others who had joined them on this journey, united in the belief that a better world was possible, if only they had the courage to fight for it.